Hello, and welcome to Heavy Subjects Podcast. I'm Reagan, and he's Ruben.
I am.
And you better be watching, because you'll be cooking.
You could watch us while you cook, actually. It'd be quite relaxing, I think. Probably.
Yeah.
I like to listen to while I cook.
If we get successful, we can turn it into a cooking program.
We can have a cooking segment in the middle rather than like an ad read in the middle. We can just like, this is what we've been cooking today. So what are we talking about this time, Reagan?
We are talking about thrash metal.
Fuck yeah, we are. I was thinking I need to have a beer to crack, but I'm not allowed to drink because of my new meds. So I've just got a Diet Coke instead.
No, that is pretty fast of you there, Diet Coke.
Yeah.
But so Ruben, so we're looking at thrash metal today, and I wanted to ask you, the first question of the video is, to you personally, what is thrash?
What is thrash? Well, I think in the last episode we covered doom metal, right? And I said there's more to it than just being slow. And in that same sort of vein, I think there's a lot more to thrash metal than just being fast. Because there's a lot of fast metal out there. Like, there's a whole genre called speed metal. There's a difference between speed metal and thrash, and also power metal, like some Dragon Force gets really, really quick. They're not thrash. They're very not thrash. I think thrash, to me, it's the way that it combines the speed, the technical proficiency of like the new wave of British heavy metal bands like Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Saxon, Tigers of Pantang. American bands took that and then merged it with like the punk scene that was going on in England at the time. And it was aggressive and it was loud, and in a lot of cases thrash is very noisy, but it's also like very well played with no disrespect at all to punk. I think Perg on YouTube said it best when he said, in thrash you can be aggressive but you're expected to know how to play your instrument.
I can get that. It's a good description, actually. So, to add on to what you said, I agree, though high tempo characteristics for the genre is definitely a part of it, but it's not the whole part. Like you said, there are other genres with high speed tempos and they're not thrash. Yeah. So we need to go a bit more outside of it than just speed. So what I set speed metal for thrash metal, and to me personally, speed metal is a lot less abrasive and much more melodic in nature. Though it's still just as fast, I believe the sort of the more harsher vocal style, with a lot more abrasive chords and riffs and within the genre, definitely separated from the speed aspect, I would say.
Yeah, and I think to make a song a thrash song, it needs to have palm muting. If it doesn't have palm muting,
is a big
can't really call it thrash. I think that's such an incredibly important part of the sound.
I mean, you don't always have to palm mute, of course.
Yes,
but it's definitely a yes. I mean, like there might be some people arguing with that one. But yeah, no, I think you can. Knowing when to palm mute in thrash is just as important as palm muting sometimes, though. Understanding the dynamics of how that works, it's very important for someone who does the genre. But not just looking at thrash as a general aspect, I feel like we've conceptualized it in sound, but what does it mean to us personally is also important?
Well, that's a good one, because for me, and I think to a degree yourself as well, it was the first sort of subgenre of metal that I personally got into. The first ever metal band I listened to was Metallica, and I was shown Enter Sandman. I think I mentioned that in the first episode as well, that my first ever metal song was Enter Sandman, which isn't really a thrash song, but from that, my uncle said, like, have you listened to Master of Puppets? Because that's an amazing album. And I went back and listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And then I went back and listened to, like, all the old Metallica stuff, and that's how I got into metal as a whole. But since then, I've always had an affinity for thrash metal. Sometimes you just want to listen to thrash and just, get hype.
Yes. And I think what you've, and to me, going into what I feel towards thrash and the kind of intertwining with what you said, thrash to me represents the sort of youthful energy at the time, like that raw aggression when you're at that age. It just captivates you at that moment in your life. When you're in puberty, life can be a bit difficult. You're not too sure where you need to be in life, especially if you come from more of a lower working class background. That type of thing can really appeal to people like ourselves. So I think that representation of pure youthful energy is important with the thrash. And like you said, yeah, I might have started with Metallica like 12 or so forth. But by the time, like within a year, I went from listening to Enter Sandman to listening to Evil and more new wave of thrash. So I really got into it very quickly at a very young age. And it was at that moment in life. So for me, it will always have a place in my life as a result, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, I'm sure you've encountered people asking you who themselves don't listen to metal. What's the appeal? Why do you listen to these like animal noises? And it's kind of like, you could say it's like emotional catharsis. I think different subgenres have different kind of things to them. Like listening to like death metal, it's like you're looking for like what's the heaviest, most disgusting sort of sound that makes you like fucking want to headbang. It's like eating spicy food, and I think with thrash metal, it's the same reason people like going on roller coasters. Because I quite like roller coasters. A lot of people really, really don't like them. I quite enjoy them. And I think for me, thrash metal is that same. It's a rush. It's a total like, adrenaline rush. Yeah. I'm going to turn the vibrate off on my phone because that just went off really loudly.
That's all right, my friend. You don't want your vibrators getting in the way.
Yes, there's definitely my phone, not something I just left lying around. So, like, what do you think about that, though? Like, what's the appeal of thrash for you, apart from like the youthful energy you mentioned? What do you feel when you listen to a good thrash song?
Well, like you said, there is a cathartic energy as well as the youthful energy involved because the emotions with thrash is just so raw. I think for me as well that not only is it great to listen to in that sense, but I feel like of all the genres alive, it feels there's an energy when you experience thrash live that no other genre gives you, and that's what I feel like really drawn me towards it, especially playing it with a band almost. It's that energy you get when you with the band live in the thrash band.
I absolutely agree with that.
Definitely. So I don't think I feel like that is, but at the same time, obviously different genres of metal offer different vibes, I'd say, or different emotional aspects to one's psyche to reach that catharsis depending on who that person is. So I think thrash for some might, react with that, and for some they might not do it at all, and I think that's probably why there's a bit of a divide within it.
Yeah. So should we talk then about where thrash kind of developed to the best of our knowledge? What were the kind of origins of thrash?
Well, obviously, though we probably talked about them already quite a bit, but obviously we have to mention Black Sabbath.
Yeah,
like always, with every one of these videos. Like, let's face it, talk to any of the big four or anyone outside the big four within the 80s thrash and early 90s thrash scenes. The Black Sabbath will be in most of their influences. No two ways about it.
And I think the same for any influential band from any scene or subgenre is gonna at some point go Black Sabbath.
Exactly. No matter where we go from, which genre we're gonna cover, it will lead to Black Sabbath in some way. They're like the root of all the genres.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we're talking about the biggest proto aspects of thrash, I feel like there are sounds how do I put this, generic to say, I think we have to mention Venom. I'm not going to go into the album black metal itself and all that. However, it is very important to mention for Thrash because Venom was essentially the proto for Thrash, death, and black metal. However, we probably explore Venom a lot more when we get to the black metal video, due to, I feel like that's the moment where we really should dive into that album.
Yeah.
But I do want to mention the album while we're talking about Thrash because it is important at the same time. It's like there's the point where it's like the closest you can get to Thrash before Thrash, essentially.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree. Yeah, especially like the title track, the opening song.
Yeah, definitely. Lay down your souls to go up and roll.
Oh, what a line! So good. It's so cheesy. It's good.
Yeah. I want to go really into the depths of Bathory when we get to black metal too.
Oh,
but the song counts as Bathory.
Yes.
Not the band Bathory, but we will get to that too.
Yeah.
For you viewers, I think. Okay, go on. Sorry.
I think another band to mention as well is definitely Motorhead.
I was going to say them actually. I was going to go into them.
Just the idea of like, what if we played metal but it was fast? That was kind of their whole thing. Yeah. It's like, why not play it like as if we're all on drugs, which they were.
That's for sure. There was definitely elements of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why the band Overkill are called Overkill. That just shows how much of an enormous influence that Motorhead had, and Phil Taylor's drumming on the song Overkill.
I felt a bit dumb for a while, not realizing Overkill came from Motorhead's Overkill. For years, I just never clocked on. Like I'll put out because I remember discovering Overkill when I was like 15, and I thought they were pretty good. I like the album, it was great. And then it took me years later until I went, "Oh crap, they named themselves after Motorhead." I felt like, why did I not make that connection?
I think it's because they have their own identity. You don't think of them, oh yeah, they're that band named after Motorhead. You think Overkill, you think of, I forget the vocalist's name now, but you think of that voice and that kind of like energy.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
They have their own sounds, definitely. I think if I had to mention two more, I think, because I feel like we could probably go on for a long time, Proto Thrash, but I want to get to the meat and potatoes of the discussion. So I think the next two other bands I would mention will be Discharge and Iron Maiden.
Discharge are really important.
Discharge, yeah, because obviously, though you people associate more with the punk and especially the crust punk scene, which that will probably come into the equation a lot, especially when you get into things like black metal. However, we might even do a lone video on crust punk if the viewers really, really want it. But Discharge, obviously, that band Discharge really, put their influence in on Thrash, and especially more so crossover Thrash.
Yeah, definitely. The album, is it here? Oh, what's it called again? The one with, it's like a play on the Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil thing. Let me just find it real quick.
Okay, yeah. I'm going to get a drink.
Yeah. Get that drink. Are we like the only people talking about Thrash online and not drink alcohol?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
If you go to a Thrash gig, I feel like you get in there and the bouncer just hands you a beer. Just please, you have to drink this. It's the law.
Yeah. I feel like I don't find mind talk. I feel like if you need the alcohol when you're at a Thrash gig more than anything else.
Hear nothing, see nothing, say nothing. That's what the album's called. That album is fucking phenomenal. It's brutal. It's great.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Super important band for influencing massive Thrash bands.
Yeah, I need to listen to them a bit more. I only know a bit of them, but I've definitely heard a lot. So we need to get into the meat and potatoes, which is the big four. And before we get into the big four, I have noticed that I wear an anime girl with pink t-shirts on the Thrash video. And you know what? It was on purpose because I thought, fuck it, let's get one of the most brutal genres and just have one of the most inappropriate t-shirts for it.
I've got my Exodus shirt on today.
Oh, hello. I was thinking I was thinking I got my Megadeth t-shirts. I could grab that, and I could go in the style of the Big Four, Big Five. You want to count Exodus, or if you want to pick up Anthrax, then how everyone to go about it. But yeah, I'm aware, and I don't care. So we're going to the Big Four now, and obviously we're going to have to start with Metallica due to them essentially almost being the first of the Big Four.
I think viewers might have heard of Metallica once or twice.
Yeah. I mean, they are a bit underground, aren't they?
That's the thing. They were at one time for about a week.
Yeah,
it was immediately
crazy week for them.
I think, should we talk about the Big Four as a concept as a whole, and then go into the bands? Because
I think we have to free flow it somehow, because if we just went each one at a time and just mention each one of their albums, it kind of does it injustice, because I feel like they're so intertwined that they're going to connect to each other.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's good to focus maybe roughly on each one at a time, but there will be crossovers as we talk about it.
Yeah. I think with, the Big Four, if you're kind of new to thrash and metal in general, you will get people called elitists, who I call assholes, who will say, "Oh, the Big Four, that's like entry level. They're shit. Everyone knows they're not good." And I think, to that, I can say, there's a reason they're the Big Four, and they're not the Little Four. There's a reason they're playing stadiums.
Yeah, I see.
They can't have sold that many records if they were genuinely shit.
I think in hindsight as well is that because the bands over time, when we got into the more newer area of metal, into the 21st century, not saying it's necessarily bad, but I do feel like the Big Four the Big Four albums became much more mediocre compared to the 80s and early 90s. And I'm not saying some of it is still good here and there, especially there were some Slayer songs from the 20th century, but nothing captures what they made in the 80s and early 90s. I don't know. This is the thing. Yeah, I might sound like elitist saying that they're better back then, but at the same time, I feel like you have to make this balance between elitist and anti-elitist, because at the same time, people get a bit babyish on both sides. I feel like you can state an opinion, but at the same time, you can, you don't have to belittle other people's opinion too.
I think the closest I get these days to being elitist about the Big Four and that is when, especially Metallica, they get a bad name. Because I've met a lot of, I'm quite young, but people perhaps younger than me who think of Metallica, aren't they sort of dad biker rock? And I'm they are now. But
yeah, definitely.
Material they put out in the early to mid 80s was beyond anything metal had done at that point.
Oh yeah. And historically, it's contextually very important for metal.
Yeah, so I think it's fine to like or not like certain areas of a band. Everyone's allowed to like what they like, but I kind of feel like at least do the research before you decide to write off a band. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I think some people find you get into trends, because it became a trend to hate Metallica. It kind of became a trend to hate all of Metallica, not just hate Sayanga, but hate Metallica. And I feel like it gets on board a bit easy.
Yeah, I think we can go into...
Some of the albums were amazing back in the early days.
I think we can go into detail about that when we cover the 90s and early 2000s. But I think...
Yeah, when we put it to part 2, we go more into detail.
But I think at the moment... can we just take a minute to talk about how good the first Metallica record is, Kill 'Em All?
Well, I mean, we can have a minute of silence if we want to, but no. I mean, Kill 'Em All is how would I put this into words? It's kind of like the Thrash hallmark, isn't it? It's the point where Thrash started.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, anyway. I mean, I know that the Hit the Lights came out in 82 on both demos and a compilation album. So technically that's when Thrash officially started, but then Hit the Lights was re-recorded again on Kill 'Em All with in my opinion, a better performance and recording. So, though it technically Hit the Lights was the first Thrash thing to come out that's officially Thrash, Kill Them All was the first proper Thrash album, and I feel like that's the impact really of. And I mean that's the album essentially as a snowball effect for the whole genre. Like for that onwards, the whole genre kind of went from there. I feel both in the Bay Areas and the sort of East Coast as well.
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot of debate over what's the first thrash song, what band created the elements that became thrash metal, but I don't think there's much argument to be had about Kill 'Em All. It is the first thrash album.
It's the first album.
Yeah.
I feel like there's proto-thrash, so like there's elements of thrash in earlier stuff, like you mentioned Venom and whatnot, but the first real thrash metal song was Hit the Lights, I feel.
Yeah.
To be released anyway.
Yeah,
so feel free to argue with me in the comment section below.
I just think that album's so good. It says a lot that
it is.
To this day, it's still one of the best thrash albums ever released.
Oh, Seek and Destroy. I mean, every time I hear that intro riff, I just like, wow.
It's so
it's iconic, isn't it? I hear it and I'm like, I just know that riff as soon as I hear it, you know. And I mean, like, I just catch myself randomly playing it on guitar because it's not exactly hard, but it's just really fucking. It's like an earworm, but it just hits well.
Who was in Metallica at that point? We had obviously James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. Kirk Hammett had left Exodus at that point to join Metallica, and he replaced a man called Dave Mustaine, who we'll get to in a bit.
We'll get to him.
Oh yeah, their new
obviously Cliff was in it too.
Yes, their new bassist at the time, Cliff Burton, who is he's the best musician in the Big Four there's ever been.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't want to say he's the best musician in the Big Four. I think there's elements of all of them that were unique to themselves. But I feel like Cliff, as a bassist within the thrash genre, was one of the most important bassists, maybe even the most important bassist within it. You know, and the fact that he was a huge David Bowie fan just makes it better.
Oh yeah, of course. He was just a fan of music. You know, he knew about classical music, and he could read and write notation, I believe, and he was interested in because I feel like with Metallica, people a really big misconception. People go, "Oh, Metallica, aren't they like really generic?" And I think if Cliff hadn't passed away at such a young age, I think they would have become like progressive but in a different way, and they would have had more symphonic elements, because albums like Ride the Lightning and especially Master of Puppets, he was doing stuff that was like, you do that with an orchestra in classical music, but he was doing it on the bass. And he was thinking all the harmonies and arrangements that he was coming up with on songs like The Call of Cthulhu and Orion. It's just incredible. And the intro to Damage Inc. is sort of the most beautiful music on any metal record ever. You know?
Definitely.
Metallica really were that good back in the day, I think. There's the stuff they were doing with Cliff's sort of musical guidance, reaching towards that classical kind of idea, but mixing it into thrash metal, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
We live in the timeline where he died in 86, and Metallica, in my opinion, has slowly gone downhill since.
Well, I'll be honest, I feel like though Metallica's downfall was happening after sort of the death of Cliff. However, I don't want to blame it on Jason Newsted. I feel like he gets a lot more shit.
Not at all.
You think he's a great bassist. I think a lot of the downside was due to the other members' decisions and also probably some PR or record label decisions as well. But again, we can go into that a lot more in the part 2 when the downfall really takes place. So
yeah, and I do think while, you know, as the sound changed as the decades went on, I think a lot of that was they wanted to do different music. they didn't want to keep writing thrash songs, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I think the idea of like, but we could be we need to make money. We need to keep this as a business. The idea kind of crept more and more in, and the idea of what Metallica was changed. But yeah, like you said, we can get into that later on.
We can get into that when we get towards the Black Album, I feel. But going into Kill 'Em All, then we have to put the appreciation into a really amazing album, Ride the Lightning. I mean, I'm not going exactly into what my favorite album is of Metallica, but Ride the Lightning is definitely up there. I feel like this album provokes an emotion while listening to it. It feels like when I listen to this album, it feels like I'm in the depths of the freezing cold, and it's amazing, that vibe you just get from this album. I think not only comes from the great songwriting, such as Ride the Lightning itself, like the solo from Kirk is probably the best solo I think personally myself Kirk has ever done is Ride the Lightning. And I think Flemming Rasmussen, the producer for the album, also producing Master of Puppets, which we'll get into in a sec, but I feel like he really helped not just shape the album sound, but Metallica's sound as a whole to make it into the iconic Metallica sound that we know it to be.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of my favorite albums in general ever. But yeah, no, I totally. It's the tone is cold. It helps as a song called "Trapped Under Ice" as well, which is a perfect thrash song. And the cover, something about the blue and that guitar tone. But I have it on vinyl. When I listen to it and I look at the cover, you do feel that cold. Whereas some of the Master of Puppets has a much warmer, more epic scope to its sound. I think the sonic qualities of Ride the Lightning do just make you feel a bit like it's almost like Metallica they're playing this really big epic technical music, but they're playing it in like a shitty club and it's freezing cold. I don't know if you know when you wait to go inside a venue in the queue before they open the doors, and it's like January and you're just fucking freezing and your fingers are numb. It's that sort of feeling I get from that album.
Yeah, that might be a bit confusing to some Australians watching this, but
about
that.
But imagine it's August then if you're in Australia.
Anyway, we're well put. I like the association with the album art, because though it's basic, the electric chairs there with the electricity, but something about the electricity feels cold, which is kind of weird because when you think of electricity, you normally feel heat, don't you? If you associate with that feeling, because electricity is hot, but for some reason it feels cold. It's like you if you would be zapped by that electricity, you'll freeze to death rather than burn.
That's interesting. I was electrocuted on a bus once, actually. And I don't know. It didn't really get any temperature from that. It just sort of, I don't know. Yeah, there was like when you get like a charging port on a coach, like your phone into, that was loose, and I put my foot there by accident, and just felt like a little it felt like someone had just like slapped my foot really hard. Oh
yeah, that's more of a. I know what you mean, but I feel more like I'm alluding more to an electric bolt, like a lightning bolt. If you ever see like a lightning bolt hit something, it burns because of the plasma. But I mean, and usually electrical fires, take place as well. So I suppose there's more association. But having been struck by a plug in my time, I know what you mean. It doesn't really feel hot. You just feel like someone's nipped you almost. Shocker. It's a bit of a surprise, lad, I tell you. I wasn't expecting it.
So
I kind of turned on, I'm not going to lie. But anyway, Master of Puppets.
Yeah, I think like with Master of Puppets, a lot of people over the years have said, it's basically just Ride the Lightning Part 2. And I think, to a point. But it's basically Metallica going, okay, Ride the Lightning was really good. That worked really well. Let's do that again, but let's just make it bigger and better and just...
Yeah.
There's a reason that's the album people look back on and go, this is Metallica's magnum opus.
Yeah, no, I don't know that. That's a good point. I feel like I could agree with you. Like, I know a lot of people can affiliate it a lot with Ride the Lightning. But despite the fact that at this point Flair and Rasputin did reshape the band's sound, they didn't necessarily dull the band at all by doing another album. What they did is they took the ideas of the sound they shaped and turned it into a new direction by instead of making it colder, they made it warmer. Instead of it felt like the songs were telling more of a story. I feel a lot of the time in this, like the way Master of Puppets is basically an analogy of drug addiction, and the whole song really represents it very well. Like the fact that the first part is the drug talking to you, or the alcohol, whatever addiction is you have. I think it's probably below more to alcoholism, but I'm not sure. I know it's about addiction in general, where it's like it's alluring you into the how it tells you all the promises, and then and no matter how much you try and hold back against resist against that, it comes back to you eventually. You give into that temptation of it feeling good and lying to you, and then as the clean part of Master of Puppets come in, it's like that's the euphoria feeling you get from taking the high, and then when it comes back into the heavy part again, it's like you're talking to the addiction, saying you lied to me, like this has not made me better. And then it repeats again.
That's the twist where you realize that it's got you and you're an addict. It's a really interesting look at like addiction isn't a choice. It's it's a disease, really. And it's when it gets you, it got you good.
I mean, someone who's an alcoholic is going to be, it will be different in every way to a non-alcoholic. Because that's just how it is. It's like, for me, for example, my addiction is smoking. And I know if I had even one cigarette, I would be addicted again. That's why I don't go near it. But alcohol, I can have a drink and leave it and I can walk away. Because I don't have that urge like what I do with cigarettes. So knowing that myself, I can see how addiction is not always a choice. You can choose how you can choose to recognize it. You can choose to want to help yourself, but you can't choose not to be addicted.
No, that's not how it works.
Not at all.
But like all the songs really on Master of Puppets, they're about control in some way. Like Battery is about not being in control of anger. Master of Puppets is about drugs. What's the first one I started? Disposable Heroes is about how governments and armies, or the governments in the military, use young people and send them off to fight for war, and it doesn't matter. They're, and I like the imagery in that song of like, greetings death, the Grim Reapers come to.
That's cool.
You're basically just feeding the Grim Reaper souls for your own selfish political gains. And I love the song Leper Messiah, which deals with like televangelism and just, send me money, like make a contribution and you'll get a better seat. It's so like, and I think like any sort of criticism of televangelism, it isn't going Christianity's bad. It isn't having a go at Christians. It's having a go at people who just want your money, and they lie about it, and they just,
It's not really so much a go at the religion as to go at the religious people using it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's what it is, because religion can be good and religion can be bad. I mean, obviously, I don't want to get too political. I know it's Thrash, so it's hard not to, but I mean, I would just take more of it. But just at the moment, take more of a neutral stance, not seeing religion as good or a bad thing. It's just a lot of the time I find that I meet Christians who are nice, and I meet Christians who are really difficult and not very nice people. And, I just go with who I see in them rather than the religion they believe in, It's the same with any other religion or any other form of atheism, really.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and I wanted to point out, if anyone is watching, if I get anything wrong about addiction or anyone out there who has alcoholism or any other addiction around that, and I feel like it's not representing you properly, please say, because I don't want to misrepresent you at all. So if you feel like anything needs correcting, in that sense, please let me know. And also, we need to go to Injustice for All now, which is the start of the controversy with Metallica, let's say.
Yeah, it's the first sort of time where they did something and the fan base went, "Oh, what have you done there? Why have you done that?"
Are you just going to learn to debate?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I am.
So what's your opinion? Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room before we get into that album.
Sure.
What is your opinion on the bass being taken out of that album? Like, what is your
the argument that the most recent excuse has been, it was either Lars or James said, well, the bass just played the exact same as a guitar, so what's the point in having it there? And I go, write better bass lines then, or let Jason write more. Because Jason wrote the best riff from the album. He wrote the main riff to Blackened. That's a Jason Newsted riff.
Yeah, that's good.
And he was in Flotsam and Jetsam, and their first album's amazing. So why the fuck would you have him in the band and not let him do anything? And also the second point with that, having the bass not be there, is the frequencies. You need the bass. You just need the bass.
I feel like, that's but one of the issues I do get when listening to it, though, it's a great album. The lack of bass is makes it more dull, or just dull. I should say more dull. So it would have been dull in the first place. I made a dull negative, positive, whatever. Anyway, it does seem more. It seems dull without the bass. I can't get my words out. I apologize.
Yeah, it's definitely a dulled blade of a sound. Do you know what I mean? We all know that person who never ever sharpens their kitchen knives, and they're just horrendous to use. You feel like you're going to chop off your thumb every time you use them.
So I do feel two parts about it, because I feel like if Lars does it because it was a way of him processing the grief of Cliff Burton going, which. Sorry, my light just turned off on his back. There you go, I'm back again. Anyway, I feel like Jesus now with the light. But I lost my train of thought completely then.
Talking about you were kind of debating
the process of grief.
Yeah.
I don't understand, like, it was like his way of processing it, and I wouldn't want to criticize someone's way of processing grief, because I understand it's a very hard thing to go through and people do it in different ways. So I don't want to mitigate his feelings in that regard. However, it definitely put a quality deduction within the album at the same time, which I feel a bit sorry for Jason Newsted, because he could have added a really nice element to the album if he was heard more. Like, Eye of the Beholder is one of my favorite Metallica songs of all time. It's a great, great song. I know they don't really play it live, it's sad, but it's still one of my personal favorites. It's kind of like sad but true, but not as over the top about the breakdowns. I feel. Which we'll get into too.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me and Justice for All, I'll listen to it again when we get to like the prog metal episode, but the last time I heard it, I just kind of thought like it doesn't really do much for me. That as an album from start to finish, you got some great tracks. Like Blackened is one of the best Metallica songs they ever did. The title track's pretty cool. One is a masterpiece. The Beholder's great, but some stuff just like Frayed Ends of Sanity and like Shortest Straw. You just sort of there going like. This is a long song, which is weird coming from me.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, I do think it's a great album, but I do feel that some of the songs are guilty of being filler. I know Ride the Lightning had a little bit of that too, but especially the Old Justice for All. That makes sense.
I disagree personally. I think Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets were exactly the right length. There was no songs that could have been trimmed off, I think, without slightly decreasing the quality. And if they added more, it would have been too long.
I know what you mean, but one of the songs on the album, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Is it Escape?
No.
On Ride the Lightning.
Oh no. I don't think it was an Escape. It might have been. It may be Escape, but I can't remember. I just remember one of the songs. It's gone out of my head because I might get fizz with my brain at the moment. But there was a song where I think it is Escape though, where Playing My Muting was a bit thought it was a bit short. He wanted to reach the 45-minute mark, and I think they said to them write a song to fill up that gap. So that's where I think that's where Escape came in.
So
it could be another song,
literally filler.
So it literally was wrote for that purpose.
I think it's a pretty good song, though.
Yeah, the song's fine. It's not a criticism of the actual song, but you can feel that it's a more filler than,
Sure, yeah.
Than anything else. I think I know. I'm going to make sure it is Escape.
It wouldn't surprise me because James Hetfield, that's his least favourite Metallica song, and that's a really common song for people to go, that's not a very good song.
I
reckon that if a lot of people, including James, had the chance to redo Ride the Lightning, they'd probably leave that song off.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to get it up. I might be wrong, but I think you're right. I think it is Escape. I'll just go with it. If I'm wrong, just put it in the comments. It's might be easier than looking up right now. But it's still a great album, and I'm not saying Escape isn't a good song. Don't get me wrong. And then we have to go to the Black Sheep now, which is the Black Album.
Well, that's interesting because I was hoping to save that for part 2, because for me, that's the first album Metallica did where they're like, oh, this isn't a thrash album. Like, this is something else. Justice for All for me was the last true sort of like one they released in the classic thrash period.
I feel like you're right there, and I feel like Black as an album would be sort of the crossover between part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
So what I think maybe would be to go back to it at the end for the viewers. Just at the very end, go into the Black Album a little bit and then use that as a transition to the part 2 as well.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty good actually, because that was the album where it was like that really signified a change, didn't it? That was because it became so unbelievably massive that then every other thrash band was like, "Oh, we need to do that. We need to sound like that."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it was
almost.
Yeah. So, should we go back then? Because I mentioned Dave Mustaine earlier. Should we talk about Dave Mustaine for a bit? Should we talk about Megadeth?
Yeah. We probably need to go to Megadeth now. Now we mentioned Metallica. I always want to mention as well that I'm a bit hyper, so I'm sorry if I seem very more hyper.
That's good for thrash, isn't it?
I seem more hyper than normal. Yeah, I go for thrash. So if I'm over talking, just tell me, just shut up. I don't mind. But
so Dave Mustaine used to be in Metallica, didn't he? Back as he likes to mention at every given opportunity, at every interview he's ever recorded. And the way he puts it, he wrote all their songs on all their albums. And it's the reason why they became so big. But you can hear some of the stuff he would eventually do with Megadeth on those earlier Metallica releases. But was it 82, 83? He got kicked out of Metallica for some reason.
Yeah.
Apparently drinking too much, which is a lot coming from a band that were nicknamed Alcoholica.
Yeah.
How much was he drinking?
But then again, at the same time, I feel like with Megadeth, like if you go into their first album, which is Killing Is My Business, and Business is good.
Yes.
But if you look at the shit show that is the recording of that album, thinking about it, I can kind of see where the kicking out kind of took place, because if Dave Mustaine was acting like that with Metallica while they were trying to record, I would kick them out.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, that's assumption. I'm not saying he was, because there's no evidence saying he was doing that in the recordings or with band practices. However, looking at the attitude he had while recording that album, well, the rest of the band as well, I wouldn't want to be in a band with someone like that myself.
Yeah, because the legend goes that when he was kicked out of Metallica, he was like absolutely heartbroken, and he was on a bus back to, I can't remember, it wasn't. He was going on a bus basically across America to somewhere else to go back to basically where he lived or whatever after being kicked out of Metallica. And he was thinking like, over the course, it's America, a very long bus journey, like hours and hours and hours on the road.
Mm.
And his thought process went from like, I'm so upset to just, I'm really fucking angry to, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my own band, and it's going to be heavier and faster and more aggressive and more technical than anything Metallica could do.
Yeah.
What shall I call it? And he noticed a leaflet from a politician at the time, I forget the name of him, that had the quote Megadeth in it, relating to nuclear warfare. And he thought, Megadeth? That's a fucking good band name. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, I mean, I like the other sort of description of the facts and the trivia within the scene and within the band. You do, where I can see you know a lot about it.
So do you think, Reagan, that he succeeded in making a more aggressive, angry version of a thrash band?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think I mean it's a really hard to ask question to answer. So, my opinion is I never really saw Megadeth as being heavier than Metallica. I feel like they are more abrasive, maybe. Like Metallica tend to take more breaths, let's say, where Megadeth seem to be more full throttle continuously.
Yeah.
But I would say Metallica, when it gets to its heaviest, is no more light. It's not as Megadeth is no more heavier than that. I would say personally.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But at the same time, I think Megadeth is more consistently heavy when you listen to their albums, especially their earlier albums.
Yeah, because that first album, Killing's My Business, every song is just like riff, just fast, angry, fuck Metallica all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like with Metallica, they have the confidence to just go, we don't need to play at 200 BPM all the time. We can write a ballad. It's fine.
Yeah.
We know that we're
there you go.
We don't have to... I feel like with Megadeth, especially early on, Dave Mustaine felt he had something to prove. And that's why every other riff is just... You know what I mean? Let's just make the chords and the leads as complicated as possible.
Yeah. So I feel like it's not heavier; it's just more relentless. I think that's
just and I love Megadeth. I think they've written some amazing records over the years. But I think
same. I mean, I agree. Sorry, I didn't talk about
that's okay. I think the whole debate of who's better, Megadeth or Metallica, I would argue that it's like, well, Metallica write better songs, but Megadeth have better musicians. But I think it comes down to just if someone asked me now, who's better, Megadeth or Metallica? I respond with, who do you prefer? Why is a banana better than like a can of Coke, or vice versa? They're different.
Yeah.
Like, they're both great at certain times. Sometimes you just fancy a banana. And that should be at the beginning of the episode. Just that on its own. That sentence.
I might just cut that in at the start, just as a a taster for what to come. A bit of a cold opening for the viewers,
Yes, definitely. But it's like,
anyway, I think I wanted to go into. Oh, I'll do that first. I mean, I love Megadeth. I've always enjoyed it. I'm on the side of I like Megadeth, but I can understand why people dislike. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
I can understand it could be a bit of a make or break.
Yeah. I got to see them last year headlining Bostock, and man, what a show! It was so good. It was just all the hits,
I've never had the ability to see them live, so I can't give my opinion on them.
Oh, you should do get a chance. It's good. Yeah,
I probably will try at least.
Yeah. So after business.
Yeah. Sorry.
So after Killing's My Business, they released Peace Sells But Who's Buying, which is widely considered one of the greatest thrash albums of all time.
And rightly so.
Yeah, it's great. It's got some of their best, most iconic songs, like Wake Up Dead, which is my personal favourite Megadeth song.
Ooh, that's a good one.
The song Peace Sells is iconic. The Conjuring is amazing. My Last Words is fantastic.
Good Morning Black Friday.
Yeah, it's an album you can put on and listen to from start to finish, and it has a bit more room to breathe, I think, than Killing Is My Business. There's some parts of like The Conjuring, like the intro on that song is a bit more kind of, okay, we're going to let it just kind of simmer for a bit before we take the energy way up.
And I think as well with 86, both being the Peace Cells and Master of Puppets, essentially being both bands' essential milestones or peaks of their career almost at that year. Like, no wonder people were comparing them when you have Peace Cells and Master of Puppets side by side as albums, basically around about the same time.
While we're talking about 86, what a year. Because you had those two albums. You had Raining Blood by Slayer.
We'll get to that.
You know, and then 87. I think about 86 to about 88 was like the peak of thrash for me, where every band in the big four or in all the scenes was just churning out just these amazing records.
Oof, yeah, I agree with that. And and like you said, like going into So Far, So Good, So What?
It's pretty good.
I feel like it's not a bad album, but obviously trying to follow up from Peace Cells is like not fucking easy, is it? So
considering the amount of turmoil that band was going through at the time.
I agree.
But then some of that album I think is really underrated. Like the opening track, is it Set the World Afire or Into the Lungs of Hell? I think it's called. I think those are the first two tracks on that album.
Yeah.
They're really good.
I think you're right.
I really like them.
I can't remember the track listing. The ones that poke up to my head for some reason is Set the World on Fire and In My Darkest Hour.
In My Darkest Hour is a fantastic song. They played it last year when I saw them, and it's such a good song. It's their equivalent of one because it's written about Cliff Burton, actually, that song.
Oh, is it? Oh, I don't know.
And I think that you could argue that event when Cliff died was a kind of catalyst for the thrash movement, and even people like Dave Mustaine who hate Metallica. At the time, he doesn't anymore, but at the time he had a real problem with Metallica.
Really?
He set his hatred apart and went, no, look, Cliff's a good dude. Like, what an amazing talent, what an amazing friend of theirs at the time. It totally sucks that he's been taken from us at fucking 24.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, how can the movement recover from this? And that was him grieving. That song's quite angry in places, saying, like, you know, that you weren't there for me, sort of thing, but you're still my friend and I still miss you. I think it's a really powerful song.
Definitely, yeah. No, I completely agree with you on that. And it's very, very beautiful put yourself. I'm going to put it better myself, if anything. But it's really interesting how death can change your perception on a person. And like him, it was from Cliff. But also there's this idolizing of death as well, where there's a sort of psychological phenomenon where when someone dies, you tend to view them with more like an idol than an actual person itself. Like you kind of can't see the bad things anymore, almost, especially at the first start of grieving process.
I would hate that. I think if after I died, people going, "Oh, what an amazing guy! Oh, he was so cool, he was so talented," I'd be like if someone came to my funeral, it's just like, he was a bit of a prick. I'd be like, well, I appreciate your honesty.
That would be funny.
It would be funny.
I like people being nice to me, but you don't need to idolize the two. I think that there's a difference between the two. Just be honest, yeah.
Yeah, honesty is the best thing you can be.
Yeah, definitely. And Rust in Peace was when, holy shit, what album.
That is, I think, I get people saying Peace Cells is their favourite. I completely understand it. For me, Rust in Peace is the best Megadeth album. It's the best lineup because they had obviously Dave Mustaine, David Ellefson, and Nick Menza, amazing drummer. Marty Friedman, one of the best guitarists ever to walk the face of the earth.
Yeah, he's great, Marty Friedman. I admire him.
Yeah, I like how every so often people go, "Would you maybe think about considering rejoining Megadeth?" No. So it's like, no fucking way.
Yeah, back off. I think I know, but I know what you mean. Like, I can understand why this is a lot of people's favorites, and I'll be honest with you, it's a very close fucking favorite to Peace Cells. But I personally think Peace Cells edges it. But I can still listen to Rust in Peace all the way through and get a fucking good kick out of it. I mean, Hangar 18, what a riff to open up with, you know what I mean?
They opened their show with that when I saw them. There was like the intro and the video started going, pictures of like what's he called? Vic Rattlehead, their mascot, their skeleton mascot, just flickering on screen. They come on, count in, just bang, Hangar 18 starts.
Definitely.
So good. Yeah.
And I obviously want to mention Dawn Patrol because that shit's groovy as hell.
I remember when I came round your house years ago and you said, Ruben, I found the sexiest bass tone ever. And you put on that song.
I did, I loved it.
You like thrust the headphones on my head and I listened to it and I went, oh.
I was still in the process of discovering more and more Thrash, and I thought like, oh, that's what I need right now. It just hit the right moment of my life. That song, it was just so sexy. But
I think it's worth mentioning as well. Like, I'm not too keen on Ellison as a person for reasons.
Don't need to go into that.
He's a really strong bassist. I'll say that. But he's also a bit of a prick. So,
if you want a whole video about why some musicians you mentioned are pricks, we can always leave that for a separate video and put in the comments if you want to.
It'll be the least monetized video on your channel.
Literally. You're acting like I make money anyway.
So you'll have to pay YouTube to put it on.
Literally. I probably will. I want to mention Countdown Extinction briefly because I know that's 92.
Okay.
But I feel like it's worth mentioning because it still has a classic thrash sound.
Yeah, I'd argue it was where they kind of became a bit more accessible, but it's less accessible than something like the Black Album for sure.
Well, I feel like it's like the Metallica's Black Album, where it was that it's still a good album, but it's just more like it's that sort of, like you said, it's that bridge between original Metallica into more mainstream Metallica, more accessible Metallica, kind of like how Metallica did with themselves. So I want to mention that as like the kind of cut-off point for them until the newer wave of thrash comes in with, and how the Big Four progressed into the late 90s and 2000s, especially with the sort of musical spectrum changing at the time. Kind of weird. I want to go into, I feel like Slayer is probably a natural progression from Megadeth and Metallica. Like,
it's actually pronounced
Slayer.
Fucking Slayer.
Fucking Slayer.
You have to scream at the dash.
I know you kind of did.
When I saw Slayer, an hour and a half in, every so often just hearing someone go, Slayer! Just got really annoying after
yeah, it does.
In between every single song. Yeah, we know it's Slayer. That's who we've paid to see.
Exactly.
They know what band they're in.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well,
Slayer
we have to start with what?
Slayer are great, aren't they?
Yeah, I like Slayer. I went through like 3 periods of Slayer phases where the first phase was I love Slayer. The second phase was they're a bit overrated. I'm not really enough sure on them anymore. And then, oh god, I love Slayer again.
Yeah, I'm so.
What made me love them though was seeing them live. I will point that out. That's what made me love them again.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I had that phase, but I was like, I love Slayer. They're the best band ever. And now I'm kind of like, yeah, I think they're great. There's a reason they're so influential. They're in the Big Four. But I totally get why some people don't like them. I totally get that. They're probably they're one of they're one of those bands that took like the extreme imagery of like stuff that like Venom were doing, and have continued to take influence from the death metal scene and the black metal scene. I think influenced Slayer and vice versa as time kind of went on.
Oh yeah.
But they took it and went, how can we make this music extreme but still sell loads of albums? Because like Tom Morello's voice,
I get that.
Like Tom Morello's voice is harsh, but compared to some of the death metal, compared to Deicide, it sounds like fucking the Beatles, Slayer, you know?
Yeah, I see what you mean. And It's definitely interesting. I feel like of the big four, Slayer is definitely the heaviest, and I think most people can agree on that.
There's
like,
no
they
argument.
are the ones that. Yeah, it's like there's no argument. They took it to a new extreme. They took more on the side of Venom, like you mentioned. Let's face it, they toured with Venom, so there you go. But I remember that tour. It was '83. I can't remember exact year where they were on tour with Venom, and then Tom and Chrono had a fight because Tom was really pissed in the middle of the night, and he needed a piss. And he was so out of it, he just wasn't know what he was doing. So he pissed on Chrono, and Chrono just punched him and knocked him out. I was like, the fuck?
That's so good. Oh.
I was like, why?
It would have been that one of those buses with like the felt seats before they had leather seats. All the coaches these days, wouldn't it? So that it would have just soaked in. That bus would have been written off forever. Then failed its
probably.
Bus is fucked.
Especially if it's like really, really dehydrated alcoholic piss as well. Like that's like the worst.
I think it's interesting.
And
sorry, go on.
I was just gonna mention into Show No Mercy. You know,
yes, that's where I was going actually. So go on.
And Self-Titled Song is a banger. Let's put that out. And obviously, I mean, the obvious one is the bad production quality, but I feel like the quality of the songs are great. Despite the bad production, which I still think it can still have its place in as being a good album. You know what I mean?
I think like it's really interesting to hear how the amount of new wave of British heavy metal influence there's in the really early Slayer stuff, like Show No Mercy.
Yeah, I see that.
It's a really interesting blend of like the aggression of Venom with stuff like Judas Priest and early, like Paul Giano era Maiden were doing.
I mean, that's a very interesting point because though you're completely right. But what's interesting, if you look at Hell Awaits, there's clearly a lot of Merciful Fate influence involved.
Yeah, and Kerry King said
even Kerry... Yeah, I was saying even Kerry King said it himself. So it's clearly there that sort of influence from the new wave of British heavy metal. Again, Hell Awaits, it was a really good step up for Slayer, and I think it's what kind of shaped Slayer's sound properly, I feel. Obviously, when you go into Rain and Blood, that's the kind of iconic Slayer album, isn't it? Like, Into the Death was fucking hell of an opener.
Yeah, I'd argue it's a perfect album. And when they played it recently, I say recently, about 20 years ago, they did a tour where they played.
Okay, how recently are we talking?
They played. They played the hits, like the main set on this tour, and the encore they came on and they played Rain and Blood in its entirety. And I think what a statement would it have been if they came on, didn't say anything, no intro, just walked on in just pitch black silence, start playing Angel of Death, play the whole album, and then just fuck off, and that's it. That's the show. Just 28 minutes.
I'll be honest.
Done. Because I think that album, you have to put it on loud. You have to just listen to the whole thing, no interruptions, just 28 minutes, and then it's done, and that's it. Because it starts and just hits you around the head, and then just beats you up the entire time. It's a really quick beating, and then that's it. It just goes.
It was also, I feel like it was the start of the controversies that would surround Slayer. Because I know Slayer's got a lot of controversial issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, the Angel of Death, quite a grisly song about a grisly person, as you know, Joseph Mengele. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name.
Joseph Mengele.
Mengele, right?
Yeah.
For some reason, I say Mengele. I'm thinking man, not men.
So I mean,
Mengele. Yeah.
We don't have to go into like mega graphic detail, but essentially, he was a doctor at the Auschwitz concentration camp. So you can imagine he wasn't a very pleasant person. He did some quite horrific things, but the lyrics of the song don't necessarily paint them in a bad or negative or positive light.
No.
They just go, "This is what happened." And when questioned about the song years later, people said to Kerry King, "Do you mean it?" And he goes, "Well, we didn't make it up. Like it happened." And Jeff Hanneman, who is no longer with us, sadly, who wrote the song, said in an interview, "Well, if this was on the Discovery Channel, it would be lauded as an amazing documentary. Because it's in a metal song, parents like to look at us and go, "Oh, you're evil."
Yeah. I mean, I know exactly what you mean, and it's kind of sad, really, because I mean, I've done it myself, where I wrote a song about a grisly, not very nice story, but you're just telling a story. You're not saying this is good to do. I'm not saying to be a Nazi and do this stuff. It's more like this is a Nazi who did these things.
It's important to remember so we don't repeat it.
Exactly, and it's important to tell these stories and not be too shy away from the graphic side of the humanity, because we need to understand that humanity can be really fucking shit.
Yeah. I think it's important to say as well. I haven't necessarily, well, no, I haven't experienced something on the scale of that, like, you know, the Holocaust or 9/11 or something that extreme. I'm very lucky to not experience anything that traumatic of a massive tragedy. You know, for some people, I understand if they'd rather not think about it because it's too much, and for some people, it's like, you know, it needs to be remembered in detail because it happened and it was real. It's when they first showed Saving Private Ryan, they had a screening before the main film came out for just Vietnam and World War II veterans, and a lot of them walked out and they said this is the most realistic depiction of combat ever. And a lot of them stayed and said, I wanted to remember it and relive it and remember my friends. So it's both ways of dealing with that sort of thing are completely valid, but they're both different.
I think long as there's trigger warnings for people with mental health to be warned about such things, I feel like apart from that, it's fine. You know, I don't think there's any issues.
Maybe at the beginning of this video, just put we talk about some fairly dark things. So if that's not, you don't want to see it, then skip to this point or whatever.
I will put that into the I'll put that into the start just to tell people there are some dark subjects here that might you know, around. And I apologise to anyone who would find this a bit too disturbing, but hopefully you're still with us and you're not too put off.
Yeah.
Going into South of Heaven, though. Wow, great album. I mean, South of Heaven is just a good start to a song. I love the sort of contrast.
For a long time, that was my favourite Slayer song.
I can understand that.
I don't know if it still is. It's a very good song. The riff is.
I mean, I don't think it's my favourite, but yeah. Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
That's right. Yeah, go on.
I would say also I find this album, a little funny thing is that I like the fact that Silent Scream is kind of like a pro-life song.
Yeah, it's weird that. Again, I'm not sure if I interpret it that way. I think it's more just it's telling a horror story.
Again, it's not interpret. I feel like what's happened here is that I'm not saying it is intentionally pro-life, but people have kind of I'm not saying correlation is causation, but have correlated the idea that Silent Scream is a very harsh, but you know, depiction of abortion, and then the fact that Tom Araya is very, you know, very Christian.
He's Catholic.
Person. Yeah. So, yeah, he's Catholic. So someone who's very Catholic writing a song about very grisly details of abortion.
Well,
people have correlated it in that sense. Obviously, I don't know the true intentions of Tom while writing the said song.
It was based on a videotape that circulated around pro-life groups, and it was basically.
Yeah, I did see about that.
This is going to get a bit graphic. So it's about what they were trying to make people think abortion actually was. Oh, they go into you and they pick out the bits of the baby one by one, which isn't how it works. I'm just going to fucking say that. That would be far too late in the pregnancy to do it. Most countries won't let you have one that late. And most people who want to, this is where I get quite politically biased, most people who wish to have such a procedure would not fucking wait that long.
Yeah, it's true.
Just putting out your entire opinions, I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, I feel like whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, the film that came out in 1984 called Silent, I can't get my words out, sorry, Silent Scream. The film, yeah, because it came out in 1984, and it was at a time of sort of the major conservative movements in America.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of pushing on biasness and opinions that are of that time. And I feel like I'm not saying that I'm not here to debate pro-life and pro-choice. I'm just saying that there's clearly a biasness towards a certain political spectrum and then over dramatizing it to point that forward for yourself. Your ideology forward.
I kind of read it as like Tom had seen the video and went, "Oh, it's disgusting. That'd be a good song." Like that's well, we are in Slayer. We do write horrible songs, so
yeah, that's just something. And obviously, Mandatory Suicide is a good Judas Priest.
Oh, that's a really good riff as well. I really like the way I don't know what the technicalities of it are, but the way the timing of the riff changes. Yeah, it's so cool.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Obviously, I think I'm going to end it around about Seasons of the Abyss. I do really want to talk about Divine Intervention, but I feel like that's better for part 2 because considering But let's start with Seasons of the Abyss. My God, what an album! It's actually the first album of Slayers I owned.
Yes, because you gave me your CD copy, because I think at the time you were like, I don't really like Slayer anymore. Do you want this CD? And it was like Seasons in the Abyss, which I think I actually have somewhere.
Oh, great! Yeah, I was funny because I remember going through that stage of like, oh, they're a bit overrated now. I don't want to listen to it, so I just gave you the CD, and then I went, oh shit, I actually like them again. I put myself into that one, to be honest. But you enjoy it. That's the main thing, right? And obviously, Wall Ensemble, God, what a riff! And Dead Skin Mask, I love that song.
Yes, and the title track.
Yeah, big team. Yeah, definitely. And obviously, Season of the Abyss is a great song. Like, it's just a good build-up. Going into the last of the big four, which will be Anthrax, going into the East Coast, basically.
I want to say this about Anthrax before we talk about them in a bit more detail. Do you think it's fair to say, Reagan, there's a lot of debate over who's the best band in the big four? Because there's arguments for it could be Metallica, it could be Slayer, it could be Megadeth. There's not a lot of debate over which one's the worst, is there?
Yeah. No, I'm just going to say it out. And this is not me dissing on Anthrax. I love Anthrax. I'm just pointing this out, but they're not the best in the big four.
I used to love Anthrax before doing the research and listening to the albums for this podcast. Listening to an entire Anthrax album, I find, is a bit of a chore because a lot of their songs kind of, at least to me, they feel like they repeat a lot of the same ideas over and over again. A lot of the same riffs come back. If Charlie Benante, their drummer, who I'm pretty sure has consistently written most of their material, because he plays guitar as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be like, I've got a really good idea for an intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then what comes after the chorus? Why don't we go back to the verse, which is the same riff, the same length? The pre-chorus again, the same riff, the same length, and the chorus will just be the same thing again, and then a solo, and then verse, pre-chorus, chorus. I'm just like a song like, I don't know, like Madhouse. Did that really need to be 5 minutes long? Does Caught in a Mosh need to be nearly 6 minutes? Does I Am the Law need to be 5.5? And Anthrax, I completely understand why they're in the big four, because they're the band that took that kind of idea, the early ideas of like crossover thrash and the more upbeat punky energy of thrash, and made that the main sort of point of their sound while remaining a thrash band. But they did it and were commercially successful. And part of the being in the big four, the criteria, I guess, of being in the big four, as well as being really important and influential, is that you bring your thrash sound to a wider audience. And Anthrax did that, whether you like it or not. They remain a very well-known popular metal band. But there's a lot of thrash bands I prefer. I would rather listen to Overkill or Exodus or Testament or Creator or basically any other thrash band.
Well, I can respect the opinion. I do like some of Anthrax. Like, I do have appreciation for Fistful of Metal, despite how bad the album cover is.
It was amazing. What about that? It's a great cover.
It just makes me have an aneurysm looking at that, to be honest. But I think despite the fact of the album cover, I do think it is in itself a strong album. I like it. It's not what for Anthrax. It's obviously not. It's kind of like the proto Anthrax, right? I get it, but I think like Alice Cooper's "I'm 18" cover was really good. I enjoyed that, and then sorry, my eye got something in it. And then Death Rider's a great song. Like you know, the chorus is catchy as fuck. And did you hear the goddamn vocal screaming now from Neil? Like it was like for so long. And just wow. Like you mean? Let's be honest. When I heard that, I was like, "Fuck, that's awesome!" You know, I just instantly went like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. You know, but again, like I can see some songs being much stronger than other songs. Like it's not consistently strong an album, but I can see the proto side of Band.
I think it's a pretty strong first album. I think.
And then Spreading the Disease. Again, I feel like that's where Anthrax found their sound. That's where this is what we're going to sound.
Because that was the first one with Joey Belladonna, right, on vocals, I think.
Yeah, it's Belladonna's first appearance on the album. And if you didn't know, Belladonna is actually an Italian for a beautiful woman.
He's a beautiful man. Have you seen Anthrax live?
Exactly, yeah, he's a beautiful woman. So, what's that? Sorry, I forgot what you said.
Have you seen Anthrax before live?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. They're all the kind of shit I've just said about them. I will say they're amazing live.
Oh, fucking amazing! And I'll be honest, like I don't want to. I mean, it's kind of thing I can talk about a lot. I do like it a lot, but I really like the snare sound. I don't know what it is. The snare sound really fucking good.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, let's be fair. Yeah.
It's good snare, and I think though it's heavy and it's got some good songs on there. I think for me, the best album is Among the Living, and the reason is that it was actually one of not only my first Anthrax album to both listen to and own. It was also one of my first Thrash albums I owned. So that's got a bit of a place in my heart. Among the Living. However, fucking. Nostalgia aside, I still think it's a solid album. It's so good. Indians and Among the Living are two really solid songs. The guitar tone is fucking out of this world on that album for 1988.
I think my favourite track is probably still Colton and Mosh from that record.
I mean, I can get that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, the whole album is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great album. Yeah. My favourite is the one afterwards. I think it came afterwards. No, it's the one. I don't get. After that was. I can see the cover in my head. And I can't remember what it's called.
I feel like you give because I was going to say State of Euphoria. Euphoria would be very surprised if that's your favourite, but Persistence of Time would definitely make sense.
That's my favourite one. Yeah, my favourite Anthrax record is that one.
Yeah, I feel like it's not my favourite, but I can understand why. Again, I think Among the Living is my favourite, just probably from the nostalgia blindness, maybe, you know.
It's the most iconic one.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It is the most iconic. Obviously, State of Euphoria was kind of a downgrade. I feel like, especially coming right after Among the Living.
Yeah.
I'd say certain songs like maybe Be Your End or Antisocial is still worth a listen, but I wouldn't call it an amazing album at all.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and obviously Persistent of Time, I can again, god damn, it definitely rivals Among the Living, I would say, and A Belly of the Beast is a beast of a song, I would say.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like Got the Time because it's basically a fucking Green Day song. It sounds like Blink too or something. It's just punk. It's great.
Early pop punk. Pop punk.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Sound of White Noise?
No, we should save that, for the next part. I will talk about that. I've got thoughts on that album, but I will talk about that in the next episode.
We've been on this phone call for a long time now, and I've noticed.
I actually had a thought when we were doing this. Do we want to have this first part just be the big four? Yeah,
I think it's going to be just the big four. So
yeah, and then
I'll edit that into the description.
Yeah, man. So part two, then I think can be like
basically everyone else.
Yeah. And I think while we're still here with the viewers, I think it's important to say that the big four are the big four for a reason. But as we'll get into in the next episode, there are plenty of great thrash bands who aren't in the big four. I think if you're new to thrash and you want to get into it, I would say you need to check out the big four, because they kind of give a good overview of all of thrash, but then also give other lesser known bands the time of day, because they definitely deserve your time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, I completely agree. I think there's so many good thrash metal albums out there that deserve the love and respect that the big four gets, but it's just they're not the big four, so they don't get this much recognition. But we definitely will get into that for everyone out there. I think maybe end off talking about the Black Album, and then go into more Teutonic scenes and maybe Exodus and stuff like that after.
So, okay, cool. So, what do you think of the Black Album? Why do you think it's important to cover as an album that kind of switched over from the classic era of thrash into the 90s?
I feel like, I see what you mean, and I feel like the Black Album was that sort of bridge, that the bridge from the 80s metal into the 90s metal. I mean, how would I put my opinion into this? Can you repeat the question one more time just to make sure I'm not confused?
So, I was just wondering what your thoughts were on the album itself, and also what about it you think makes it like that transitional sort of thing. It's important because it was the point where I think in the mainstream, the 80s kind of classic era of thrash was like, that's done. The classic era of thrash is now over, and we are starting the new. It's before new metal reared his head, but it was round the corner, in 91. it was coming.
Yeah, it was coming. The Fred Durst caps were on the way. And,
the Adidas tracksuits.
All day about sex and everything, But going into the Black Album and what my opinion on the album, so despite the shit the album gets, and I can understand why it gets a lot of shit, but there's the big but here. There's a big 2 whole cheeks, 1 large crack, big but.
A big curvaceous butt.
Yeah, the whole Grand Canyon view, really. It will forever have a place in every metalhead's memory and heart. No matter who you are as a metalhead, anyone who was a metalhead from the 90s onwards, this will be in the nostalgia in some way. Let's face it.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
you can't take that away from it, no matter how much you want to shit on it. Almost, it feels like it's what I call the guilty pleasure of thrash.
Yeah. I think it is a perfect example of a guilty pleasure album, because it is I think anyway, it is genuinely good. It's a good album in the sort of annals of rock and metal combined, and but you feel bad for listening. It's like U2. You don't want to admit you like U2. Why would you ever do that? Because people will ridicule you for that. Why would you do that? And then but there's a reason that the Black Album's popular. There's a reason it was so successful, and it sold so well when it came out. And at the time, a lot of not just metal publications fucking hated it, but mainstream rock and music publications like Rolling Stone and NME at the time were going, this is a masterpiece. I've got a really controversial opinion for that one, though, Regan. I actually think that the Black Album is better than Unjustice for All.
Oh, that is.
I can't believe you would. And they're typing in the comments going, I can't believe that ginger prick said that.
That is definitely keyboard warrior worthy comment, I feel.
I just think as an album from start to finish, criteria for any good album for me is it a satisfying listen from start to finish? And I think the Black Album does that better than Justice. That's just my opinion. It's a different, one is like technical, kind of bordering on progressive thrash. The Black Album, I'd say, is more heavy metal and hard rock with some thrashy parts in there here and there. But I think the songs, like nothing else matters. Elton John said that's an amazing song, and I trust the guy who did like fucking Rocket Man, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. He didn't write those songs, but you know what I mean. Bernie Taupin did.
I know what you mean. I get what you mean. I'll be honest, I don't share the same opinion. I do think Just for All is better. I think, yeah, you could argue Black Album's better quality in terms of production.
Oh, yeah.
I can't disagree with that. But Just for All, I just feel is better written, just in my opinion.
Fair enough.
Some of the songs that's like one is better written than any song on the Black.
I think it depends on what reason. I'd probably agree. I think I probably would say one on its own as a song is up there as one of Metallica's best, and it's better than the best song on the Black Album. But like I said, I think the Black Album is just a better experience as a whole piece of work. The whole album is more the way the pacing and every song is good quality, and like the way it flows as a good film or a good book.
I get what you mean. Like consistently, it is. In theory, it is better because it's more consistent. It's better quality.
I think it's preference.
Like I said, because albums, you do have to think of album not just as a song, but you have to think of every song as a chapter in the movie almost.
Yeah.
So, and this from start to finish has to flow with each other, and it has to like work with each other. And I feel like, yeah, you could argue, I suppose, sport doesn't sometimes flows a bit oddly compared to Black Album too.
Yeah.
But I feel like I rather listen to them just I can't really explain massively why, but I think some of the songs within Justice for All are so well written that I'm willing to listen to the whole album to experience it properly in that way.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's not a very popular opinion of mine. A lot of people would say Justice is the better album. I don't know. It's just how I feel about it.
I respect it.
Yeah,
I respect the opinion. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to say Black Album is a shit album. I'm just saying that so it's like some Nothing Else Matters is a very good ballad, and you could say the same for the was it Unforgiven, and then
Unforgiven's an amazing song. Yeah,
it's a great song. Like the two ballads are very well done as ballads go, and Holier Than Thou and Through the Never is not very mentioned, but very good. Like Through the Never is really.
I think songs like that were great examples of Metallica going like, what if we did the sound we were known for at this point in our careers, the sound we're known for, stuff like Disposable Heroes and Creeping Death. But what if we tried to just not compress it, but make it a bit more concise, where we don't have to have a massive. It doesn't need to be 8 minutes long. We can just have 4 minutes to get to the point and say what we need to say. And that's one thing I say about the Black Album as well. And to further my defense of it is that it's been widely accused of, they just sold out. They wanted to write more accessible stuff to get on the radio. Not true. At the time, James and Lars were saying, like, we were tired of writing 9-10 minute songs. Kirk said one time they got off stage after playing the title track from Justice, which is 9.5 minutes long. And apparently he said to them, we are never playing that song again. It takes up half the fucking set. And you can see people in the audience looking bored. If you're bored...
and I think as well... Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I can get that. I think it's also important to point out that how Metallica used to record up to Injustice for All was more like just a live band almost. Like they just played the songs, they just wrote everything together in like a practice studio and then kind of record everything live and then overdub some stuff at the top. So it's more like it wasn't about like how to make the best sound, how we're going to layer each thing at one at a time and make sure each thing is all the production lines and then adding more on top of that and so forth. It was like the Black Album was the point where Metallica kind of took a much more different approach to record an album, where it was like how most people record albums now, where you go into a studio, they write everything separately and then together, and then you work together with producers, and then the kind of layer each thing one at a time, and then write parts as they go with that as well, and change things here and there. And they took a lot more of a mainstream approach to the recording, which is probably given off the mainstream vibe that it does. But Metallica was really known for just being more of a live band. And then basically it's more like the studio albums was there to represent what they were live. That was it. But the Black Album was not like that. The Black Album was like, this is an album with, this is like a high production album to represent what we are capable of in the studio, if that makes sense.
And I know you disagree with me saying it's better than Justice, but would you maybe agree with me when I say that it's the last Metallica album they put out that was great? They've never done one as good since.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, not two ways about it. Like, it is the last Metallica album
they have struggled.
Genuinely enjoying.
I feel like they've struggled over the last over 30 years now since the album came out to either replicate its success or lead off it, or try and replicate the success of albums like Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets and Justice for All.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a tricky one because I'm not saying all the new material's bad, but album-wise, I don't think they were ever able to recapture the self-titled Black Album.
I would argue they haven't done an album as good as the Black Album, and after Reload, they haven't done a good album, full stop.
Well, that can go really heavily into the next part, let's say. We'll get into more millennial side of Thrash. Because obviously the Big Four, though the Big Four weren't a millennial band in any way, but, I feel like discussing Megadeth, Metallica, Anthrax, and Slayer within the context of the 21st century is important because how much changes there were, not just to the bands, but to the musical spectrum around them at the time. I think it's important to put that into context. So what we'll do is we'll cut it off here at the end of the Big Four, in the original Thrash scenes. Then we'll go into more bands in the same era of time, but not the Big Four. Then from there, we'll end up the third part as the bands that came after, like the millennial new wave of thrash bands, but also catching up on other bands that were big thrash bands like the Big Four into that era of time. And then we can cut a lot there and go into the next genre. So it's going to be put into 3 parts.
So this has ended up being, this episode's mainly about the Big Four, because I think we underestimated how much there was to talk about. And we knew there was a lot to talk about anyway, but we didn't kind of realise that there's thrash, man. It's such a huge genre. There's so much to it. There's so many bands, so much great music.
No, I agree with that.
So I think that's a good spot to end. I think this chapter in the heavy subjects, the series,
heavy subjects. Hopefully, you guys like my pink anime girl t-shirt about the whole of this, just to really add a juxtaposed position here. Definitely. Well, anyway, it was good talking to you, Ruben, and
always.
We'll say goodbye to the audience watching us, and I will stop
goodbye, millions of people watching.
Yay, we're famous.
Thanks for listening or watching if you have. Really appreciate it.